Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this author interaction organized as a part of the NLF Reading Challenge 2021. My name is Karthika. I'm the head of reading at Neev Academy. The NLF Reading Challenge is a 6-month-long reading event from January to June 2021 for students between 10 to 13 years of age. It is open to participants on the competitive and the non-competitive tracks. We have students from across India participating in the challenge. In addition to fun book-based activities and regular author interactions, the challenge will conclude with a quiz competition that will see the 3 best teams win gold, silver, and bronze engraved trophies respectively, certificates of achievement, and a great set of books. Before we dive into the interaction, we would just like to point out to our audience that as this is a webinar, we will not be able to respond if you raise your virtual hand. Please use the Q&A box to type out your questions. In fact, if you already have your questions ready, please feel free to type them out. If you're a student, a teacher, or a school librarian, please do mention the name of your school along with your question as well. We're sure you're all eager to get started with the session. Before we do, we just want to acknowledge that our country is going through a very difficult time at this moment. We hope that these sessions will provide a breather for everybody who is watching. By helping us think about the characters in books that we've loved, we could possibly view our own lives and the world around us a little differently. Today, we have with us an incredibly special guest, the thought-provoking and award-winning author Kate DiCamillo, whose book Beverly Right Here is on the reading list of the NLF Reading Challenge 2021. Kate DiCamillo describes herself as a writer, a reader, and a storyteller. She believes passionately in the power of reading aloud and in building the habit muscle to strengthen one's writing. Her book speaks to readers across the spectrum. She has written picture books and early chapter books, which include the Mercy Watson series, as well as the linked series Tales from Deckawoo Drive. Her novels include the wonderfully heartwarming Because of Winn-Dixie, which celebrated its 20th anniversary last year, as well as the Newbery Medal winners, The Tale of Despereaux, and Flora and Ulysses. Her most recent novels are Rainy Nightingale, Louisiana's Way Home, and Beverly Right Here, which make up the triptych that forms the 3 Rancheros series. In all excitement, I am so glad to introduce and welcome Kate. We're very happy to have you with us today.
Good morning, it's morning for me. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, Kate. We're very excited. I'm sure audiences too. And so we'll dive right into it. We know that you believe really strongly in the power of reading aloud. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that? And would you be able to do a short reading for us after that?
Yeah, I would love to read to you from Beverly Right Here, and I'll talk a little bit. This is my favorite thing to talk about, is the power of reading aloud. And I was lucky enough that I had a mother who read to me, but it's also that thing where I've noticed so many times as I've gone through life talking about reading and being in a room where somebody is reading to somebody else, that you see something magical happen that is kind of below the level of what you're actually talking about. People connect when they let down their guard and join together in a story. So if I'm reading to you, you relax your guard, and I relax my guard as the one who's reading, and we meet kind of in that third safe place where we're not as protected, and it lets us kind of open our hearts. And that happens in big rooms. I mean, I've felt it happen in a room with 5,000 people, and it happens one-on-one. It happens when a sibling reads to another sibling. It happens when a grandparent reads to a grandchild. It happens when a young child goes in to visit their grandparent in the hospital and reads to them. So it's this magic that it lets us step out of ourselves almost. So what do you think about me reading just a little bit from Beverly Right Here, since that's the book that, is that good?
Yes, sounds lovely and perfect.
I'll just, I'll read a little bit of chapter 1. Buddy died. and Beverly buried him. And then she set off toward Lake Clara. She went the back way through the orange groves. When she cut out onto Palmetto Lane, she saw her cousin, Joe Travis Joy, standing out in front of his mother's house. Joe Travis was 19 years old. He had red hair and a tiny little red beard and a red Camaro and a job roofing houses in Tamaray Beach. Beverly didn't like him all that much. "Hey," said Joe Travis when he saw Beverly. "I thought you moved to Tamaray," said Beverly. "I did. I'm visiting, is all." "When are you going back?" she said. "Now," said Joe Travis. Beverly thought, "Buddy is dead. My dog is dead. They can't make me stay. I'm not staying. No one can make me stay." And so she left. And that's the very beginning of Beverly right here. And it also gives you a good idea of who Beverly is. Somebody who is kind of no nonsense and willing to take big chances. And also she's a little bit emotionally guarded. So I'm ready for all the hard questions now.
Excellent. And as the book progresses, we get a sense of, and we worry for Beverly at the start of it, but you get a sense of how she's able to size up people's character really well. She's able to size up Jerome. She's a good judge of character. She's able to look past Mr. Denby and see what his family life is really like. She recognizes Elmer's kindness. And I think that was really cool and really nice to read. What I wanted to ask you, Kate, is Beverly Writer is the third book in the Three Ranchero series. You start
Yes.
off with Raimi Nightingale when they're all 10 years old, Raimi, Beverly, and Louisiana's way home when they're 12 years old, and then Beverly is now 14. All of them are very different. Beverly's tough as nails. Louisiana believes that she has extra hair clips that can give her good luck. Raimi can feel her soul growing and shrinking inside her. But the one thing that sort of connects all of them is the fact that they've had a parent who has chosen to leave, or they've had both parents who abandoned them. So to what extent do you think that while you were writing, to what extent did their personalities and who they were become influenced by the fact that their parents have left? This also ties in with two student questions from Nenika Vishali, who's a fourth grader, who says, "What inspired you to write this book?" And Tasmia, who says, "How did you feel while writing the book?"
Yeah. Okay. That's a lot of, it's a beautiful how you phrased your opening question, because this is one of the things that I found about writing is that most of the time I don't know what I'm doing. And then once the book is out in the world and I start to talk to readers, I start to figure out what the book is about and the themes that connect it. And, you know, it's funny because all these books have been out for a while now, and no one has ever said to me, all three girls are dealing with missing parents, which is like, when you said it, it's like kind of like, duh, of course, but it's not something that I have actually put together and thought about before. And so I'd like to start there with that notion of a missing parent, because it leads into the questions about where the books came from and how I felt. So I grew up in a single parent home. Rainey's story is as close as I ever came to telling my story about myself. It's like people always assume when you're writing a book that you're telling your story. That is the closest that I ever came. My father left when I was 6, not when I was 10. And I started to think about ways to make him come back. And my idea was, what if I grow my hair? Maybe he'll come back if I have longer hair. So that whole thing of Raimi longing for the missing parent, and then Louisiana and Beverly, all of them in single parent homes. So those stories, that's where those stories come from, is deep inside of me, that puzzle that I'm always trying to solve of how do you deal with the fact that a parent is missing? And even though I'm 57 now, I'm still turning that question over in my heart, and the stories are part of how I try to answer that. How do you go on when you lose something? How do you go on when You're afraid to trust people. How do you learn to trust people? Those themes keep on showing up again and again. So that goes to the question of, how did I feel when I was writing Beverly? I felt like Beverly, and that I felt very guarded, and I slowly let down my guard. And as Beverly learned to trust these people that she had found herself in the middle of that community, I learned to trust them too. And I learned to show more and more of my heart, which is what, for me, writing is about, is putting my heart on the page.
Lovely. I want to tell you, Kate, that when I was reading the book, and specifically that specific moment when Beverly reacts the way she does to Elmer's picture of her, where her first reaction is to just dismiss it. She folds it up because she can't stand to see how he sees her. She doesn't recognize herself. And it reminded me so much of Ada from The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley.
Oh, that's such a great book. I love that book. Oh, and what a wonderful connection. Yes, yes, yes.
And so, in just the fact that both of them, they don't see themselves for the way the world sees them. And I thought that that's also an experience that as adults, as children, that we ourselves may have encountered. So, and you've had so many conversations with readers about your books. Have any of them come and told you about the fact that they related to that particular moment of being seen, truly seen by someone else?
That's really, I love that question so much. And I have to say, because the world has changed so much, it used to be that about half of my time, I guess, was spent on the road, and going out and doing readings and meeting readers and signing lines. And I have never had somebody articulate it exactly that way to me. But I've had, for instance, I was in a large theater, and a little boy stood up when in the question and answer session, and held up his copy of The Tale of Despero and said, "I have dyslexia, and I'm wondering if you wrote this book for kids like me, because this is the book that I feel like it was written for me," which is not the same as saying I feel seen, but it is exactly that, I think, right? It's just, this book feels like it was for me. So he wanted to know, do you have dyslexia? Did you write this book so that kids like me? And I said, I don't have dyslexia, but what I have is a broken heart, which I think we all have. And if you put your broken heart on the page, then it lets somebody else have a place to put their broken heart, and then we can see each other there. And so in the signing line, when kids come through, there's a moment sometimes where I know a kid needs for me to see them. And so that happens without any kind of verbal interaction, without them saying, this book made me feel seen. But I know that that's what they're saying to me. And I know that if I look them right in the eye, I can give that back to them in person. Does that make sense? So it happens again and again without it being overtly articulated, I think.
Beautiful. And for anybody in our audience who hasn't read Kate's accounts of what her interactions with her readers are like, please do check out her Facebook page. There's a lot of material there, and it's lovely to read. Just so much joy and honesty and candor that comes through in all of those accounts. Kate,
I feel so lucky to get to interact with readers in it, and without the pandemic, we wouldn't be doing this right now. And so I've been surprised and delighted to find that need to connect can happen even this way, because I feel connected to you right now, and I can look down and see the Q&A numbers down there, and I feel like we're all in here together, even though I can't see everybody's face. And I so wish that I could, but still, it's just, I feel so humbled and grateful every time I get to do this, find a way to connect through stories. So
yeah, absolutely. And it shows through in everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you write. So that's lovely for all of us as well. We have a question for you, Kate. This ties in with one of our questions and something that's coming from a student as well, about the animals and birds which occupy a special place in all of your books. These are characters who have panache, who have mystique, who have heart and soul. And Kabir Singh asks you, I have read Dear Miss DiCamillo, I've read 4 of your books, and noticed that in most of these novels, there's a strong bond developed between a human and a certain animal. So I wondered why most of your writing is centered around some animal. Do you draw upon your personal experience, or perhaps you generally do like these features? He's in grade 4, going to grade 5. Before you get to your response, Kate, I just want to show our audience 2 pictures which will tell us about your personal connection with animals. This is Kate as a child with her dog Una and her brother, and you can see the joy on her face. And in the next picture, we have Kate at a book signing at Parnassus Books, and it's the exact same amount of joy that grown-up Kate has that young Kate had.
See, I can't even look at those dogs without smiling. Yes. And so you're right. You lead me right into answering that question, which is actually, let's start with the joy, which you can see, which is palpable on my face in both of those photos. And so it is that joy. And it's also, I have found from answering this question and thinking about it quite a bit, that the books, so many books that I read when I was a kid featured animal protagonists. Paddington the bear. I loved those books. I would go back to them again and again. Stuart Little, The Mouse and the Motorcycle. And so those stories meant so much to me as a kid. The Cricket in Times Square. And so I think that's part of it too. But what I have found is that we open our hearts a little bit more easily to animals sometimes than we do to each other. And so it's not a calculated move to put the animal in there. It is coming from that place of deep joy for me. But I find that for readers, we will throw our heart into the story much more quickly when it's an animal. We're a lot like Beverly, I think. All of us, a little bit wary of trusting each other, and it's a little bit easier to trust an animal sometimes. So it's that too. But it also goes back to that very thing at the beginning, that I look like I'm going to levitate from joy when I'm 3 years old there with Una. And again, it's like such a beautiful juxtaposition that you put those 2 photos together. Thank you. It was a delight to see that.
Thanks so much. I mean, they just spring out at you. I was looking at it on your social media pages and I thought, this is just priceless.
Oh, it was okay. I have to say that can I just articulate something? We only have half an hour. This is so much fun. Thank you for doing this. I wish I could. Yeah, it's an utter delight. So, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for the next question.
Thanks, Kate. So now we'll move on to the questions about writing. And I'll also take this opportunity to tell our audience that Kate DiCamillo has a 12-part video series of writing tips on YouTube. The NLF team will share that out with you on the chat box if you want to go and check it out. These are videos that she made during the pandemic because she believes in the power of stories to heal and to connect. But what I want to do is, when I saw these videos, Kate, it reminded me of something that you'd written many years ago, which was a pep talk, a sort of letter for National Novel Writing Month, where you'd spoken about your experiences when you were a picker at a book warehouse about 20 years ago. You'd wake up every day at 4:30 a.m., write 2 pages a day. You had a co-worker who also wanted to be a writer but didn't write. And he would ask you about whether you've written, and you said, yeah, I wrote 2 pages. And he would say, oh, you think Dickens wrote 2 pages? What's plan B for when the writing doesn't work out? And in that letter, you've cited this anecdote, and you've talked about the fact that as encouragement for those who want to write, that write for all the people who doubt you, write for the people who are not brave enough to try this grand and wondrous thing themselves, let them motivate you. So I wanted to ask you, Kate, now you're 2 Newbery medals down. You've had a lot of wonderful books that have made their way to you and to us. Do you still feel like this reasoning holds resonance for you as to why you write? We also have some student questions that have come in. Akriti Ravinder, who says, what do you do when you have writer's block? Dhruv Vedantam, who says, what do you do when you get burnt out from writing books?
Oh, beautiful. Okay. So does it still have resonance? Yes, I think we spend so much time talking about the power of somebody believing in you, which is wonderful. It is great to have somebody in your corner. But when I look back on that writing in the beginning and having Gary waiting for me every morning to make fun of me for showing up and doing 2 pages, it was not why I was writing, but it was really it motivated me to keep on going. Not it's just like I'll show you, and I still it you know I still hear that little voice sometimes, because there's always this time. Okay, now we'll talk about writer's block and what do you do when you grow weary of writing. There's always a reluctance to get up and do the writing for a multitude of reasons. One, because you might be afraid. Two, because you think it isn't going to work out. I'm going to fail. That's fear too, I guess. Three, because you're lazy, right? It's easier just to sleep in. I don't get up at 4:30 anymore, but I still get up around 5:30 and I do the writing. I do the writing before I can talk myself out of it. And as far as writer's block goes, I have found that you never know when a story is going to open up. So generally what I do is I just show up and I do the 2 pages and I try not to judge them. And so I say that I don't believe in writer's block. I believe in bad writing days. And there can be lots and lots and lots of bad writing days, but you can still show up and write 2 pages. And then what do? I like the question about the weariness of writing. I have learned that, and I didn't do this at the beginning of the pandemic when it was just so terrifying. I really leaned on showing up and doing the work every day. But I've also found that it's good to give yourself a break. You want to let the well fill back up. And so I don't make myself do it. I will work for a long stretch of time and then I'll let myself fill the well back up, go out, look at the world, and pay attention to everything. So it's just kind of a balance. You don't have to do it every day, but you do have to be paying attention to yourself and what the story wants and what the world is doing, and letting yourself fill up. So
Excellent. I think that was a very, very well articulated response.
Thank you.
Kate, we have a question from a teacher, Satish Gandhi, who's the TOK coordinator of the IBDP at Sanjay Godawat International School, Maharashtra. When you read to a child and the child anxiously interrupts, how do you deal with the child's perspective?
I'm sorry, I missed the have I been?
When you read to a child and the child anxiously interrupts, how do you deal with the child's perspective?
Oh, when I read to a child and a child interrupts, I love that question. I think that so much about storytelling is being present. And so I feel like if you just wait, the story will pull you in. So it's just this wait, wait, wait. And then after a while, I disappear and everything, and it just becomes the words and the story. And so I wait for that spell to be cast, and I believe that it will be cast. So I just keep reading, and I know that the story, which I always feel like, even if I'm reading somebody else's work, like I have found how wonderfully effective it is to read Mo Willems aloud to any group of enthusiastic, overexcited kids who don't want to listen. Mo Willems will calm them down. But what I have found is with my own books, if people aren't plugging in, if they're so excited and they want to, it's just like, if I keep on reading, the story always, which is this thing that's better than me, will grab them, and then it takes over, so.
Excellent. So we have 5 minutes left, Kate, and I want to ask you a slightly longish question. Um,
Okay.
so we know that you have two new books coming out, which is Franklin Endicott and the Third Key, which is volume 6 in the Tales from Deckwood Drive series, which comes out in June. We have your novel, which is coming out, The Beatrice Prophecy, with two-time Caldecott medalist Sophie Blackall. I have to say, a two-time Newbery medalist, a two-time Caldecott medalist coming together. This sounds sensational already. Uh, I read a little bit about the book on Amazon, but I also watched John Shu's session yesterday for Libraries Week as part of the conference for international educators and librarians, where he spoke about your book. He spoke about The Beatrice Prophecy, which is coming out in September 2021. And he said it's a story of a girl who wakes up one morning and she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know her identity. She goes on a journey with a boy named Jack Dory, a monk, and a goat to confront her destiny. But what struck me about this is the fact that, unlike your other characters, Beatrice seems like a new sort of character to your canon, where with your other characters, they're looking for people who will love them, who will make them feel whole. And Beatrice has that. She has that sense of belonging. She knows she's held. She knows she feels secure. And knowing that, she goes on to confront her destiny. So, is this a new sort of character who's being added to the Kate DiCamillo canon of literature?
You're such a good critic. I mean, and you know, and by critic, I mean somebody who, in the old-fashioned sense of the word, who synthesizes. And it's, you're exactly what I'm talking about when it's just like I want to write down notes because I'm just learning how to talk about the Beatrice prophecy, and it's going to take, you know, it won't be out for 3 more months. And it's conversations like this that will help me put the themes together. And I don't know that it's a beautiful point that she already has that and she has to rediscover that. And so I guess in that regard, it is a departure. But in another regard, it is my same old song, which is the power of being seen and known and loved, and the power of connection and the power of storytelling, which I don't know if Mr. Shu talked about that, but this is so much a story about stories and how you can find yourself through the written word, which is so much my journey. You know, like it took me, I struggled a little bit to learn to read, and I knew I needed it so desperately. And then by the time I started to write and had this connection with people, that was the other part that made me like become fully myself. And it could be that Beatrice is a final acknowledgement of those two things being interwoven. I'm gonna have to send you an email and make sure. Once you read this book, we'll try to get you a copy in advance and have you tell me what it's about.
Okay,
And that will help me. Yeah,
I would love to do that. I'm so looking forward to it. So, Kate, before we close, there's one question that we ask all of our author delegates who come in, which is if they could have a shelf of books that have helped make them who they are, what would the titles on the shelf be?
Beautiful. So Hans Christian Andersen would be up there. The collected Hans Christian Andersen, the collected Eudora Welty, Isaac Dennison, both the biography of her written by Judith Thurman and also all of Isaac Dennison's, I think of them as fairy tales. There's a fairy tale theme, isn't there? But also in a totally different direction, Christopher Paul Curtis's The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963, which is what essentially got me writing for children. And I would put Beverly Cleary there because she spoke so much to my child self. And then I reread her as an adult, all the Ramona books, and which weren't out when I was a kid, and they have her just immediacy and understanding of all of our hearts. So, and I could go on forever. E.B. White needs to be on there, but like, yeah, just, yes. Okay, I'll leave the shelf right there so that I don't mess up your time. I'm gonna make sure that Tracy Miracle gets you a copy of this book. This has been just a spectacular to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's been absolutely illuminating for all of us. That half hour went by so quickly. But hopefully, the next time we get to meet you, we'll get to do a longer session with you. Hopefully, we'll get to see you sometime when the world allows all of us to travel again.
Yeah.
Yes, wishing you the very best of luck, Kate, with the 2 new books that are coming out. We can't wait to read it. We're sure our audience can't wait as well. Thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care of yourselves and find solace in books. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, Kate.
Bye.
Bye. Lovely having Kate DiCamillo with us. Find solace in books. That seems to be all of our life's purpose, isn't it? On that note, we'd like to tell you that our next author interaction is with the Native American writer Robert Bruchac, who will join us on Friday at 9:30 a.m. He will be talking to us about his book Two Roads, which is an important book because it's an own voices novel about a Native American boy who finds his heritage and his identity during the time of the Great Depression. It promises to be exciting. Dr. Bruchac is wonderful to listen to, so please do join us for that session. It's Friday, 9:30 a.m. our time. It's actually midnight his time. We'll send you an email on this so that you remember. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please do follow us on our social media handles to be updated about our upcoming events. On that note, we hope that you stay safe, that you take care, and we wish you happy reading.